Hello everyone. Welcome to episode 4 of the Visible Mending Workshop presented by the Davenport Public Library. In today's episode we're going to dive a little deeper into Sashiko stitching, working on some of the decorative patterns that it's so well known for. We'll be stitching a couple of small squares to add to our sampler fabric. I'll show you how to draw a grid on the fabric and then how to add the stitching lines. First, I wanted to highlight a book for anyone that wants to explore Sashiko further. This is Simply Sashiko by Nihon, Vogue. Not only does this book have full-size templates, it also has in-depth information on how to stitch Sashiko and lots of projects that you can make with your stitching. Let's talk about the tools and materials you'll need for this episode, many of which we also used last week in episode 3. For an in-depth look at all of the materials used throughout the workshop, please refer back to episode 1. Of course, you're going to need some basics like thread snips. You're going to need thread. This is Sashiko thread. I demonstrated how to create this braid in last week's episode. If you don't have Sashiko thread, you can use pearl cotton. Works just fine. Look for number 8 or number 5. You're going to need a Sashiko needle, but if you don't have a Sashiko needle, which are extra long and have a larger eye, you can still start with an embroidery needle. If you get real interested in Sashiko, you're probably going to want to hunt down some Sashiko needles. It'll be much easier to do in the long run. You're also going to need some tailor's chalk. This is what was in the kit if you got a kit. There's various kinds of tailor's chalk out there and chalk pencils. So use them all the time. So they're easy to find if you weren't able to get a kit. You're also going to need some fabric. In the kit there were these small 4" by 4" blue squares. This is a nice size just to experiment with. If you didn't get the kit, any dark colored fabric, and I would choose a smaller size like this for the experimenting, will work just fine. And I say dark fabric because that's what's traditional in Sashiko, but if you use a white fabric is also used quite a bit. Just be sure that you have a high contrast between the thread that you use and the fabric. And then you'll need a foundation piece of fabric to add to stitch your little samples to. Now, I'm using the second part of the drawstring bag. If you decide to make the drawstring bag, there are 2 pieces, and I did the borrow stitching on the front or the other piece, and now I'm going to add these pieces to the back part. You can put them anywhere if you want, and you don't, of course, have to make the drawstring bag. That's just optional. You could put them side by side like this, or like I did in the first one above the other. Be sure to leave some room for the drawstring part and for the side seams. In addition, you're going to need a straight edge. Now, that can be a simple ruler, it can be a simple piece of cardboard that is nice and straight. I'm using a quilting ruler. There's all kinds of quilting rulers out there about every size and shape you can imagine. The really great thing about using a quilting ruler is that they're transparent and you can see the lines through. So as you're adding your lines, you can keep adding more lines easily by looking through the ruler. A quilting ruler is not absolutely necessary. Like I said, you can use any kind of ruler or straight edge. And then this is just a little extra. This is something I had in amongst my multiple craft and office supplies. And it's a circle template. I'm going to be using some of the circle, I think this one or this one I use the most, to create curved lines, because you can draw your curved lines freehand. You don't need a stencil or a circle, but I'm not real good at doing it freehand, so I need a little help. You don't need a stencil for that. You can use a glass or a jar that's the right size. I've seen people will make their own kind of templates where they'll find a circle from a jar or a glass or something circular, draw it on a piece of cardboard, and then use that cut out cardboard piece as their tracing line to make their curves. Okay, let's get started by making our grid lines on our fabric. So I'm using the dark navy fabric. This is 4 inches by 4 inches. It's a nice size to experiment with. And you'll see why the quilting ruler works so cool, because I can line up the 1 inch line here and then just gently draw. Don't go too, you don't need a super dark line or heavy line, so go real lightly. The lighter you go, the easier it is to remove later when you're done stitching. Then I'm going to make 1 inch marks here along the top, and I just line up the 1 inch line of the quilting ruler on top of the chalk line that I just drew. Makes it real easy. So you should get 3 lines, 4 sections. And then I'm going to turn it this way. Up so that it's straight and work my way up. Now you can use, like I say, just a regular straight edge. A regular ruler, you'll have to do the extra step of marking off your 1 inch, oops, a little crooked here, of marking your 1 inch points on each side so you get straight lines. But you'll end up with a grid like that. Okay, let's get started drawing the stitching lines. I'm going to start with a straight edge one. This one is called Arrow Feathers. It's a real simple one. It's easy to grid out, and it's pretty good starter one for stitching. So I'm going to start in this lower right hand corner, and I'm going to go up 2 squares and over 1 square and draw a diagonal down like this. So just line it up. Again, don't press real hard on the chalk. And then I'm going to bring it down the other way. So 2 squares down and 1 across. And I'm going to keep going across the way here. Now, the book I showed you earlier, Simply Sashiko, has a whole bunch of full-size templates in it. And they'll tell you how far apart to make your grid lines. They vary. You can change the size of the pattern by changing your grid lines. So some are like 7/8 inch and some are 1.5 inches. We're sticking with the basic 1 inch ones here. I'm gonna go for the next row up. But for this, for these little sampler ones, we're just doing a real basic 1 inch by 1 inch grid. I'm trying to lines it this way. Just make sure they're all even. So we're going to be stitching these lines, and we're going to be stitching these lines, but we won't be stitching the lines across. Now I'm going to show you how to add curved lines for some different patterns, and we're going to talk a little bit about scale too. Now here's a template I created just using a piece of cardboard and the bottom of a glass. And this is the stencil I showed you earlier. And I'm just going to use part of the curve there. Now this pattern is called 7 Treasures. And it's based on a square. So I can put the curves within these 1 inch squares, or I can do it within these 2 inch squares. So let me show you with a 2 inch square. So looking at this 2 by 2 section, now my template is just a little small, but it'll work. Remember, these are just guidelines, they're not the law. So I'm gonna go up here from the top and just follow this curve around to the bottom. And there I have a curve through 2. Now I'm going to go on the other side of that 2 by 2 square and draw the other part of the curve. Again, just guidelines, not the law. So I'm going to bring this one up here and turn it around. So I continue on, I put more curves on these two 2x2 squares, and that creates the pattern. Now that's really only one central motif. I'll finish that up and show you what it looks like. If you wanted to do a smaller motif, smaller curves, so the motif is smaller, but you'll get more of it on the sampler. So you start smaller here. So I'm just, instead of using a 2x2 square, I'm creating the curves within each 1-inch square. That corner one's kind of hard because it's hard to grab hold of the edge. So I'm going to show you. So each square is going to have a circle, or have 2 curves in it. Let's see if I can get it this time. So you see I'm just using that curve of the stencil to help me draw straighter. If you are comfortable drawing curves yourself, you don't need a template or a stencil. You can just draw it freehand. So here's what our little squares look like after the grid lines have been chalked in, and then the stitching lines. This one, I used the cardboard template. As you can see, it makes a much larger motif here because I did it over 2x2. And this one I did within each 1x1 square. So it makes it smaller. You can see more of the motifs. So you can make your squares a little bit bigger, like 5x5, and then mark off a 4x4 square within that 5x5 piece of fabric. And you could stitch a border then around it. So that's another option that you can do. Sort of like with this one, this is a much larger piece of fabric, but I stitched a little border around it, and then I started stitching like this all the way up. So here's one more curved pattern that you might want to try. This one's called Ocean Waves, and it finishes up looking similar to this. Now the number of lines you put under each curve is entirely up to you. I often see it with just 2 lines here. And it is on the grid pattern of 2 across and 1 up. So 2 inches across in this case, and 1 inch up. And I just drew a curve across the 2 inches like this. I used the inside part of my stencil here. Here you can see where I tried to do it freehand and failed miserably, so I went back to the stencil. And I didn't draw a second line in there, but I probably will stitch a second line in there. So here are the squares that I've marked out with some stitching motifs. So experiment, try a couple. If you got the kit, you have 2 pieces of material, and of course you can use your own material. I would choose something fairly lightweight, like a cotton or a cotton linen blend. So pick a couple, and then we're going to use them on our drawstring bag sampler that we're working on. Of course, you don't have to make the drawstring bag. You can use any other material just to practice on, but you will, because these don't have a border on them, you will want to put them on another piece of fabric. That'll make it a little easier to work with them. So choose how you want to put them side by side. You want to put one on each side, however you want to arrange them on your material or your drawstring bag foundation pieces, however you want to do that. And then you'll need a pin or 2 to hold them down until you get some stitches in them to get them so they don't slide off your fabric as you're stitching. You won't need very much. These are traditional patterns, so they're not copyrighted, and it's pretty easy to find templates and grid patterns online and in books. I will list a couple sources in the notes below for places that you can look for these. Okay, let's get started stitching. I've got a Sashiko needle here threaded, and I have it already knotted. If you need a refresher on knotting the thread, I did talk about that in depth in last week's episode, in episode 3. So I'm going to start stitching this patch down onto the foundation piece of material here. One of the interesting things about Sashiko is that you follow a particular path when you're stitching. So with this one, we start and do all the vertical lines first. So I'm going to start down here, and work my way up and then down again and then back up. And then I'll finish off I'll cut off the thread and I'll start again down here. And I'll go up and down, back up and down, and then start over and do this side. So this is a pretty straightforward one, lots of straight lines. I'm just going to bring it up just a little ways away from the patch itself, through the back. And start stitching it on. Now, you want to concentrate on making your stitches even. And again, with Sashiko, you're kind of loading up your needle with a bunch of stitches and pulling it through. I find it really helps to lay it down gently and gently pull the thread and make sure your tension isn't too tight or too loose. And you just continue on. It's a great way to just think about, you just think about your stitches, you kind of can forget about things that are bothering you. It's a great way to spend time when you're watching TV shows or movies or audiobooks. And don't forget, the library has a free audiobook program called Overdrive or Libby. It's the same thing, it's just two different apps to access it. And they include ebooks, but they also have e-audiobooks, so you can listen to books while you're doing this. Keep up with your reading and enjoy some handwork. I find handwork very relaxing. I really enjoy being creative this way. So I'm going to finish off this line onto the back, and I'm just going to travel over to this next vertical line and do the same coming back. Pulled that a little too tight, so I'm going to straighten that out. Again, you want to keep your stitches kind of neat and even, and you can see this one's not very even. You can pull it out, start over again. Skill comes with practice, and there's really no substitute for practice. I'm just trying, but it's kind of a low stress kind of practice, so if you don't mind that little wobble, don't bother about fixing it. If you do want to fix it and try again, that's not a problem either. So I'm going to keep stitching this, and then I'll be back and show you what it looks like when it's finished. Okay, so I finished up this pattern, and as you can see, when the stitches crossed, when the lines crossed rather, I kept the stitches even and not touching, just barely meeting. I also added 2 little tiny stitches here. This is not part of the pattern. This is just to keep the corners from getting caught too much and help keep the patch laying flat. That would be another advantage to putting a border around it first, just to keep the patch secure on all the edges. So next I'm going to stitch this one. This is the 7 Treasures one. And this is one where it starts to get fun with your direction and the way you stitch. Again, it's just a simple running stitch. It's just that we're going to start down here in the corner, and I'm going to follow the curve like this. And then when I get to the top here, I'll come back down and curve back down this way to the bottom. So let me get started on this one. Again, I'm going to start just a little bit off the patch, so to help attach it to the foundation fabric. And again, it's just a running stitch. It's kind of amazing how this very simple stitch can create so many patterns. Now with the curves, in order to get a smooth curve, you're probably going to load up fewer stitches on your needle at a time so that you can stay even and stay on course. Let me get that pin out of the way. And this is another one where lines are going to cross, and you're going to want to keep a little free or empty space there. You don't want them, you want them to just barely meet. You don't want them touching or crossing. So I've gone this way, and now I'm going to go up this way on the square. Okay, you can see I've done the first line, kind of curving my way up the width of the fabric, and now I'm going to head back down. So again, when you're doing the curves, sometimes it helps to do fewer stitches. If you were able to load up 5 or 6 or 7 stitches at a time on your needle before, when you were doing the straight part on the previous patch, you might want to just do 3 or 4, at least until while you're still learning and practicing. And again, when these lines meet, you don't want to be crossing over them unless you cross over completely evenly. In this case, that would be possible, but you want to leave a little spot there. So when this one comes up, I'll bring it up to here and then start over here. I'm going to continue stitching this, and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. And here are my finished squares sewn onto the piece of material I'm going to be using for the drawstring bag. Here's a couple more examples that I stitched up. This is the Ocean Waves one. I'm using just 2 lines for each arch. And then here's 7 Treasures again in the same pattern as this, but on a much larger scale. Now there are some alternatives to drawing your own grid lines and your own stitching lines. You can buy stencils that you can just place on top of the material and then trace the stitching lines with your chalk. You can also buy little kits similar to this. This is just one example. These will come with your fabric pre-printed with the stitch lines, some basic instructions on how to stitch those lines, and there's also thread and a needle in here. So these are a great way to practice your sashiko. It will be on a piece of material that's much larger, so you get a lot more practice in. And like I've said many times, the best way to get better at doing anything is practice. I hope you enjoyed this episode on Sashiko stitching and that you were inspired to try some yourself. It's really a great way to relax and enjoy some creative time. If you do try some Sashiko stitching, we would love to see what you come up with. If you're on Instagram and you post a picture there, please tag us at DPL Visible Mending. The DPL stands for Davenport Public Library. And also tag the library's account, which is just at Davenport Library. If you have questions or suggestions, you can contact me directly at Hetzler@davenportlibrary.com. Next week, we're going to be talking about weaving. We're going to take a small hole in our fabric and then create a weaving over the top of it. This is a chance to really try out different colors, different patterns, and have a lot of fun. I hope you'll join us. Until then, happy stitching.